connection. I'm Mira Rubin here with you on Enlightened World Network. And today's topic is the magnificent other than conscious mind. We have this incredible treasure trove of our other than conscious intelligence that has its whole life of its own, that when we are able to access it, it's a tremendous source of wisdom and insight. So we're going to talk today about how we might gain greater access to this incredible treasure trove. But before we get started, let's take a minute or two to get present. Let's take a deep breath in through your nose and hold it. And imagine clean, crisp oxygen flooding your lungs, flowing into your bloodstream, nourishing all your cells, all your organs, bringing vital life energy to your body and being. And as you exhale, exhale any tension, stress, negativity, fatigue. And now let's take another deep breath in through your nose and hold it. This time, imagine brilliant bright light lighting you up from the inside out, illuminating, electrifying, and energizing all your cells, your molecules, your electrons, creating a brilliant beam of light and energy from your heart out into the world. And as you exhale, exhale any remaining tension, stress, negativity, fatigue. And now let's press our palms together. Vigorously rub your hands together to feel the friction, the temperature, the pressure, the motion, the tickling and tingling when you stop. And allow all those sensations to bring you present right here, right now, into this remarkable physical form that enables us to experience life. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Good morning, Rosalind. Good morning, Shosha. So good to have you joining us this morning, and welcome to everybody else who's with us. Today, we're talking about the brilliant other than conscious mind. And this comes from a particular session that I did with a client yesterday. But it is indicative, really, or pervasive in the work, the core connection work that I do with folks, because what we're doing is we are engaging their other than conscious. I say other than conscious rather than unconscious, because somehow unconscious feels diminutive. It feels like it means less than. And in my experience, this other than conscious awareness is so much more vast than our conscious awareness. It's like there's a whole different life going on in the other than conscious world. So this was a really good example of how we can make change. And it defies logic, which is part of or is the secret sauce, maybe, is that the process itself or the associations defy logic. So it short circuits certain brain filters, I think, that we have. And this is conjecture on my part, but I've been watching this stuff for years and years, and so I have my hypotheses about how it works. So understand, I'm not saying this is a fact per se, but it's the story that I'm making up to understand this stuff. Anyway, this person was experiencing what a grayness, let's say, in their lives. And so the way that we do the core connection work is to start out by saying, what's the first thing that pops into your head? Why? Because that's pulling from something really random. It's pulling from a signal that's presented in this context by the other than conscious. And it can look really random. And this person was seeing another person's house who they have a great respect for. And what they saw was that the house was gray, the trees around it were really predominant, but they were gray. Everything was gray, and there was a gray storm cloud. And then the person who owned the house showed up, and the client was saying, well, this person has sort of a wall around them, sort of a protective wall. And despite that, the client has a profound respect and appreciation for this person. And the way that the wall showed up was like a hand in the stop position, like you're not getting any further, you're not getting any closer, kind of thing. And the client realized this isn't a personal thing. This was something that was just the way that person was. And they accepted it without taking offense to it. And once they realized that the hand was in color, they saw that the person was in color. And when the person was in color, the house and the trees were also in color. But when that person wasn't there, everything went back to gray. And there was this feeling of foreboding. And the client was perplexed as to why this other person, it's like, well, what does this have to do with anything? Right. And what I've come to learn is that the things that show up in these sessions are symbolic, like dreams. In our dreams, we experience symbols, and there are some people that say that in our dreams everything is us, everything is a manifestation of ourselves. So it was very clear to me that this other person wasn't about the other person, but because it was another person that the client respected and cared for, the client was able to presence themselves to this dynamic about the surroundings being gray until the person showed up in color. And also they were able to be present to the acceptance that they had for this person. So we went through the session, and at the end, they said, I don't understand why this other person showed up. I said, that other person is you. That other person is you. And when you show up, there's color. And it brought tears to their eyes. All this emotion welled up, because then they were able, it's like all the pieces fell into place, like this acceptance for this other person that they hadn't had for themselves. And so this other person was a stand-in for themselves. And I think there's such an elegance to that kind of messaging and transformation. And I'm always tickled and awed and delighted to be witness to the brilliance of the other than conscious mind, to provide us with ways to understand something or perceive something differently, such that our experience is shifted. Again, because it's bypassing logic, it's sort of getting into the wiring and rewiring things on of its own sort of accord. And the thing that makes it possible, I think, is that in the context of a session, we're creating sort of a sacred space where we can communicate with this deep well of wisdom. And I, after years of doing this, have come to trust that the other than conscious mind is going to present exactly the right thing for that person, to the symbols that speak to them on a deep level. So I trust the emergence of those symbols and have seen miraculous things happen as a result of them. So then the question becomes, how do we connect with this other than conscious intelligence more directly? And I think that, well, certainly we can through meditation, but the most pregnant times for me are as I'm going to sleep and as I'm waking up in the morning before I've fully gotten conscious. So in this interspace place. And it's so interesting. I don't know if this is something that other people experience or not, but there are moments when I hear other conversations going, and I'm not, I'm not delusional like with voices in my head, but it's caveat there or disclaimer. But it's like I can hear conversations. I don't actually hear them, but I'm present to other conversations going on below the surface of my conscious awareness that are completely foreign to me. It's like hearing other people talking. And who knows, maybe it is. But running stories and scenarios that I'm not consciously present to. And every now and then I get snippets of these things, and it's bizarre. It's bizarre. I know it's not me. I mean, I know it's not, um, I'm not deluded by them. It's funny how I feel like the need to defend, but I don't know if anybody else experiences this. I really haven't had this conversation with anybody. So if this is something that you experience or have experienced, I'd appreciate hearing about it so that, just comparative experience. But it's so interesting when I catch these things. It's almost like there's all this thought stuff going through the ethers and catching bits and pieces of other conversations. And also sometimes I get downloads, I get information, and I don't know where that's coming from, sorts of insights, sorts of things, and new ideas. So the other morning I was before I was really up, I was doing some core connection work with myself, which has a very different form. And I was wondering, how can I speed it up? And I got this image of the beginning of some kind of geometry to be working with. And I don't have any idea where that came from. And I don't know where it's going. I don't know if it's going to develop into something, but it was synthesizing things that my conscious mind isn't or hasn't been. In fact, when I was in college, this was interesting. I was in college. Actually, I had taken a break. I was in art school and I had taken a break, and I had a dream. And in this dream, I was doing work in bronze, and I just had to go and talk to the professor and see if I could audit their class. And I did. That was in real life. The dream was I was doing work in bronze. And in real life, I went and did that, and I ended up graduating with the show in bronze. I ended up going back to school and did this work in bronze. And it was my other than conscious mind that was synthesizing these different skills and interests that I had had to say, hey, go do bronze sculpture. And so my other than conscious was solving a problem I didn't even or know I had, or was answering a question I didn't even know I had, and directing me to do something that opened up new doors for me and was a path forward that ended up being really powerful. So part of the deal here is being willing to pay attention. And sometimes the imagery that we receive, if we're receiving imagery, sometimes that imagery can be disturbing. And it's important not to jump to conclusions necessarily, but to be in an inquiry around it. And also to reserve judgment, I guess, not to jump to conclusions, reserve judgment, be in the inquiry. Because sometimes we can receive incredibly powerful, potent messages in forms that seem frightening, but that are maybe just messages of transformation too. So death that might appear in a dream as literal death can be a transformation, a transmutation. I woke up one day with the phrase final days in my head. And you can imagine, with the political atmosphere and whatnot, that could be pretty terrifying, final days, right? And the climate and all of that. But what I'm also in a transition period for myself, where I'm relocating, and final days is the final days in my current environment. And from that reminder or that awareness of final days was bred a deep appreciation, a deepened and deepening appreciation of the comfort of my current environment and the joy of that this place has had for me. So we receive messages on all different levels, and I think it's really valuable to recognize the richness of our other than conscious intelligence. And when we operate, and this is not a minor detail, from the notion that life is happening for me and through me rather than to me, then that may help to increase our openness to receiving that wisdom, and to be able to take advantage of those times when the veil, so to speak, is thinner, like when we're drifting off to sleep and when we're awakening in the morning, that we can reach more deeply into that space. And for instance, those times, those twilight times or alpha level times, are times that are most effective for self-programming or repatterning. So gratitude in those moments, or affirmation in those moments where we're in between, have greater potential to penetrate our consciousness. And the other than conscious is where all kinds of capabilities reside. At least that's my hypothesis. Again, that we can tap other dimensions of understanding, of skill, of knowledge, of awareness in these in that deeper well, or from that deeper well, that is the passage to possibility that we all have available to us. So sinking into that and being willing to listen rather than chatter, because that's what our conscious mind wants to do all the time, is just chatter. To be able to listen beyond the chatter, to notice what's going on, because there are conversations, there's there are thoughts that we are not necessarily conscious of, that are oftentimes running on an automatic pilot, that when we quiet ourselves, and this is not from the other than conscious mind, but that this is patterned programming that often is running without us even being aware of it, without being able to hear it. And if we can calm ourselves, quiet ourselves, and listen, it can be quite a revelation to say, oh my gosh, what is that? Why is that happening? How might I rewrite that script? But it for me, consciousness and the nature of it has always been my deepest fascination. Like, what is this? What is going on? What is reality? What is perception? And it's been a really, really rich exploration, and there's so much available for us there. So, and realize that other than conscious intelligence speaks in symbols, typically, because those symbols are supercharged and reach into all different areas of our awareness to gel things together. We say a picture's worth 1,000 words. Well, a symbol is that on steroids. So that's it for this morning's musings. I'm Mira Rubin. This is the Core Connection, and I go live here each weekday morning at 9 a.m. Eastern on the Enlightened World Network Facebook page and YouTube channel. And I invite you to please like, follow, and share Enlightened World Network and me. The links are in the description. And as always, it really is a pleasure and a privilege to share these mornings together. So